Hey, welcome back. Are you ready to talk about pre-construction? I get questions about pre-construction all the time. A lot of first-time home buyers consider it, especially if you are in a bit of a hotter market where it feels so difficult or so impossible to try to get into the market. Buying a property before it's actually built in pre-construction can in fact be a cheaper way to get into the market, or a less expensive way, or what I really mean is a perceived less expensive way to in fact get into the market. In theory, if you are buying a property that's not been built and you compare it to a property that is built and standing already today, then the cost is less expensive. But part of the challenge with pre-construction is that, you're buying at a certain price, but you actually have no idea what's going to be going on in the market. So let's say that it's going to take 2 years for the building to be built. Well, in 2 years' time, you don't know if the market will have dropped significantly or if it will have gone up significantly. And yeah, you may be able to look at historicals and say, oh, the market's been going up, so no problem. I'm comfortable with pre-construction. I'm actually getting a little bit of a deal. But in reality, you're actually buying something that doesn't exist yet. So I don't want to deter you if this is something that you feel is right for you. Again, what I'm going to do throughout this entire course is just really share an objective opinion and share my perspective, and always explain why. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily agree, but when you're purchasing with pre-construction, you're not actually buying a physical property yet. So you don't know what in fact is going to really truly be the value when the pre-construction building is actually now built. There are definitely some advantages in that, you often get to play a big role in designing what the place is going to look like. You can choose sometimes the outfitting of your unit. Where's the bathroom going to be? Where's the bedroom going to be? You can upgrade, you can choose the flooring. So wherever possible, if you are going to buy in pre-construction, make sure that you go to the actual mock-up and you walk around, because just seeing the blueprints or seeing sort of the layout of how it's going to look will feel very different spatially, and the more you can get a good feel for it up front, the better. And of course, try not to get carried away with all of the upgrades. I know it can be like, oh, but it's just one more upgrade and one more upgrade and one more upgrade and one more upgrade, and before you know it, your budget is gone. We've gone way overboard on your budget. So even though you have the incredible luxury of designing it up front and adding all of those upgrades, make sure that you stay within your budget. When you're buying pre-construction, inevitably, you're buying something that is going to be built. And what the builder is telling you is you're getting a discount today because you're buying it before it actually exists. I think we got that all figured out. Now, typically when you buy a pre-construction building, a pre-construction property, pre-construction condo, house, whatever the case may be, the builder will give you a timeline by which they expect that it will be complete. But very, very, very often there will be significant delays. So, you may hear it'll be ready in 1.5 years, and then 2 years, and then 2.5 years, and then 3 years. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but I'm actually not. Often when you're buying pre-construction, you can expect to move in at a certain time frame, but there can be a lot of delays and it can take a lot longer than you might expect. So just recognize that if you're looking to buy a pre-construction condo because you want to time it with when you're getting married or you're ready to move out of your parents' place, you really think about it. I actually have a friend, Sean, who in his mid-20s purchased a pre-construction condo. He was really, really proud. It was funny. Whenever we'd be out downtown, he would point up to like a piece in the sky and say, you see, that sky piece is going to belong to me one day, because he had bought a pre-construction condo. And we always kind of joked around with him. We're like, okay, Sean, like when are you moving in? When are you moving in? And every single time we met for drinks, or I talked to him on the phone and be like, hey, Sean, so when are you moving in? And it was always delayed, 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 delayed. So Sean was moving out of his parents' basement, and the pre-construction actually took about 18 months longer than he had expected. And so, if you're thinking about pre-construction as the right solution for you, just recognize that from a timing perspective, perspective, you don't really have control over it. And even if the builder has given you a timeline, it can actually take a lot longer before you can move into the property. When you're buying pre-construction, the builder will often make a predetermination in terms of how much money you need to put down as your down payment. I've seen situations where, the down payment is 10%. I have seen situations where it's been as high as 20 or even higher, and recognize that in actuality, what the builder is doing is taking your money up front, and they're using that money to in fact build the building or build the condos or build your property or the subdivision area. So that may or may not fit into your budget. So sometimes, like I said, it can be more expensive, just in the sense that you may be required to put more money down than maybe you were planning to. But often it is set by the builder itself. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm going to put down 6 or 8%, often that's not going to cut it if you're buying a pre-construction property. But we're going to talk a lot more about the down payment in the next module. If you are brave enough to buy pre-construction, please, 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 and always, always, always do your research on the builder. Find out how many buildings have they built before, were they on time, were they on budget. There are those stories where builders have collected down payments and disappeared off the face of the earth. So when you are going to buy pre-construction, if that's what you decide that you want to do, make sure that you are really researching and finding out what is their historical trends, how quickly do they typically close, do they go over budget, do they stick to their word, can you take a look at some of the other buildings that they've done to really give you a feel for who in fact you're investing your money with. Because while it is going to be your property in the future, there is an element of risk associated with buying a place that's essentially not been built yet. So if you are buying a property that is in pre-construction, which means it has not yet been built, when you purchase the property, you are actually going to have to pay HST in Canada. Now, when you buy a property that somebody has already lived in, so it's a resale, you do not pay HST, but if you are buying a pre-construction property, you are responsible for covering HST. So when you are signing your purchase and sale agreement, which you will upfront if you're buying pre-construction, make sure that you really read it and understand all of the nuances of it, and make sure that HST is in fact included. I know quite a few people, unfortunately, who have purchased pre-construction and then at time of close didn't realize that they were responsible for paying HST on top of the entire purchase price. So, scrambling at the 11th hour to try to find the extra money. So when you're signing that agreement, make sure that you understand whether HST is included or isn't included, and if for some reason it is not included in the price, that you work with your mortgage broker and your lawyer to in fact figure out what that's going to be, so you don't have any surprises. Now, in later modules, we're going to be talking about all the financial components, so don't worry, we'll get there. But I did want to flag up front that when you're buying pre-construction, that's in fact where HST will have to be paid, and it's not always necessarily presented to you as included in the price from the builder themselves. Let's talk about assignment for a second. Assignment is something that is very, very common in the investor world. So let's say, for example, let's take my investor friend Kelly. Kelly lives in British Columbia, and she puts in offers on properties all the time. Of course, as investors, well, we all want to have more properties, and hopefully you guys want to have more properties too. We'll get to that at a later stage. But Kelly's out and she is buying a property. She's found a great duplex that she wants to potentially hold in her portfolio. And when she puts in the offer, she also includes an assignment clause. An assignment clause basically means that she does not have to be the person who closes on the property. She can in fact pass that on to somebody else who will buy the property, which means she's never actually going to own it. All she's really done is secured the property by confirming that the seller is in fact going to sell it to them. And so this is very common in the investor world, because sometimes it may not be a good fit for your portfolio once you've actually done the due diligence on the property, or the financing may not come in the same way, or I could end up working on another deal, or my joint venture partner who's got the money is coming in. Anyways, I don't mean to overwhelm you with that, but just to say that it's actually very, very common for somebody to be working on a property and think that they're going to buy it, or not even think that they're going to buy it, and they're going to pass it on to another investor to buy instead. And so that is called assigning a property. And so the reason I actually went on a little bit of this tangent is because when you're buying a pre-construction property, I think that it's definitely worthwhile seeing if it's possible to be able to put in a clause of assignment. Now, some builders will not allow that. And I know you're thinking, Limor, what? Like, this is the property I want to live in. But you never know what's going to happen. Maybe the economy is starting to turn and you want to sell it before. Maybe the building is taking so long that another property comes up for you and you want to be able to sell it to somebody else. If you have an assignment clause inside of your offer that says that you are allowed to pass it on to somebody else, you're allowed to essentially sell the property to somebody else before you move in, it gives you a lot more flexibility. So I would suggest that you work with your lawyer to see if you can in fact include your assignment clause. Also, when you're talking to your lawyer and you're looking through all the contracts associated with a pre-construction property, you're going to want to read the fine print because there's often additional closing costs that you may not consider that don't apply in other properties. It could be things to do with the way the property is built or the driveway or certain nuances. But if you work with your lawyer to take a look at all the fine print, you can understand what additional closing costs you will be responsible for that are associated with a pre-construction that typically don't exist if you're buying a resale property. All in, pre-construction can be a good fit, but it has to be the right fit for you and your lifestyle and your finances and what you need. There is no one size fits all. So if it is the right property for you, don't be afraid of it. Just make sure that you understand all the nuances associated with them. And a good lawyer is going to help you. Don't worry, we're going to be talking about lawyers a little bit later and some of the other elements that you need. This wraps up module number 1. If you haven't had a chance to do all of the homework yet around what are your guiding principles for yourself as you go through the real estate journey, what are the things that you need in fact in your first home that's not your forever home, as well as the 5 words that you're going to use to describe yourself or describe the property, which will help you on your way, I highly recommend that you take the time to do that homework, even if it feels a little bit silly. Making sure that you outline all those elements for yourself will set you up for success. We'll see you in module 2.